Hi everyone. Well, today we're going to go and talk about Barovia. I'm just going to go down the list in alphabetical order, and then I'll get some. After I get through those, I'll go through the ones that have really small blurbs and talk about them and see if what could be done to them or not. Uh, Barovia is pretty much the first adventure. Uh, and it was not the first module I ever got. My first module was Ravenloft 2, which is really taking place in Morden. And I might talk about that a little bit when we get to Morden. Um, in the new Ravenloft, we have an actual adventure which came out before they redid that, which is of course Curse of Straud. I ran this in the Adventure League. I had a good time running it, and I had a pretty good table. Doing Adventure League, it's kind of like you pick people up, they go, and it can be hit or miss. But that one was a pretty good table throughout the entire adventure, and I was happy about that. They got off into doing some really weird stuff, like they made friends with the werewolves and ate children with them. But that's who the table was. I allowed any alignment, so uh, I had to deal with a pretty evil party. Um, Also, we had some really golden opportunities. There's a part of Strahd's castle where this fake Straud on wires comes down, and one of the adventurers had split from the party to scout, and he really thought he was going to die. And so, not figuring out anything else to do, he decides to pants it. Anyway, it was an interesting table. We had a good time. There are some things I did not like about the adventure. I don't like the fact that some of the people in Barovia have no souls and they're just constructs of the dark powers. I think they did that for existential reasons, like what would it be if they could just make people out of thin air, and then those people could just vanish, and that might be a problem, especially with some of the younger people. But I don't like that at all. I really dislike that. The other thing is the addition of what was Strahd's nanny. And the reason for that, yeah, Baba Lysaga. I don't like that at all because it states and makes it out that Strahd was always evil, and I don't like that. I don't think. I know that there are people that are doing the planning of Dungeon and Dragon. I think I saw an interview saying that their plan for Strahd was to be the worst person you ever met. But I don't like black and white villains. I think that those are really uninteresting and boring. Uh, that being said, Strahd is evil and he is irredeemable. But he is a lot more interesting if he starts out as not a bad person and has a fall from grace than to always be a stereotypical villain like Skeletor, or like a comic book thing where they're always evil and they're ridiculously evil. I just would like a more grown up villain, which obviously was a decent man at one point, but then had a fall from grace, and it's a tragic fall. Doesn't make you like them, and it doesn't make them a good person. But at one time they were. It also kind of plays into the fact that you could be good, and if you have bad choices, you could be in Strahd's shoes. So I really dislike the thought of him just being solely evil, black and white. I really dislike it completely. So I really, really would ask people not to do that. It'll be a lot more interesting if you add depth to them and not be a black and white character. The other thing in Barovia here, I mean, I don't mind how they did things. It's a fine thing. There is an interesting thing that's kind of in the side. You gotta really have to read some of these side things that they're suggesting, because there's Easter eggs to the old system, and it mentions that, first of all, it mentions Lissa von Zarevich, which is a reoccurring character throughout Ravenloft. Actually, she was the one responsible for vampiric mind flayers. It was part of her plot against Straud because she hates him with all her heart. And it's a very cold heart. She became a vampire. I think she's his grandniece. Yeah, I think because it was like his brother Strum didn't show up to the wedding, and so his family survived the massacre, and she's like Strum's granddaughter. I think. She is really cold-blooded. She became a vampire, and in Ravenloft, as vampires age, they become more powerful, and she was one of the first ones to really realize that. And in the old days, ghosts would, with their strike, would age you. That's their damage. They would age you. So you would just get older and older, and eventually you would die of old age, right? Well, she figured out that vampires become more powerful as they get older. So she found, either she killed one of her lovers or found one of her lovers who was a ghost, and she taunted him to the point where he started attacking her and aging her, making her more and more powerful until she got to the point where she wanted to be, and then destroyed him. Anyway, she's very intelligent. She's a good character. However, I don't want her in Barovia because I have plans for her elsewhere. So we will talk about that probably in the next installment of A Domain. All right. So there's another thing I want to talk about, because they're talking about a vampire that suddenly appeared, which is very interesting because that vampire was originally a Dark Lord of a neighboring place, Guntarak, and it was Lord Gundar, and he was a pretty boring vampire. He was just kind of a thuggish vampire, and in one of the first Ravenloft modules, they just killed him off. And then later on, he came back, kind of like, it's basically stealing a plot point from one of the later Universal Monster movies. This one is like a monster mashup. And he was in a sideshow, his skeleton with the stake through the heart, and they pulled the stake out and he came back. So Gundarak ended up being split into part of Invidia and Barovia. And so, like, Valakai, I believe, was originally a part of that land that is now part of Barovia. So it's up to you if you want to include that information in there, but that did exist at one point. So what countries should Barovia be connected to? Well, I thought Carteras. I'm not thinking that now. There is a cluster from 3rd edition, and I would really like to, because you could go up into the mountains of Barovia, that you could go to what you call the Frozen Land Cluster. And these are places that were not included in the new series, so you would have to start from scratch. One of the countries is called Sanguinia, and yeah, the Dark Lord is a vampire there, and that might be too many vampires together for you, but he's kind of a different vampire. And then there's Vorostokov, which is a werewolf place that food is very scarce. He's also a werewolf that puts on a wolf skin, and he only can be in a wolf form. So that might be interesting for you. Sanguinia, he is what a special kind of vampire, and it's sort of Mask of the Red Death kind of thing there that caused it. Um, I I kind of wanted to do a thing with him. He was a prince that wanted to survive the plague, and he used his guest's blood to survive it, but he didn't survive it. He just came back as a vampire, but one that is diseased. That would be really interesting. So I would recommend connecting that via the mountains. Um, Next episode, because I'm over 10 minutes now, will probably be Bloodspur, and we'll talk about some of my ideas in there. That will probably be a very short one, and we'll go from there. Thank you.